So, hello and welcome to the third episode of Footballing Stories with me, Jake.
And me, Jack.
And this is the second attempt at recording a Brighton episode, but it's only fitting because of our European adventures starting today, Jack. I'm looking forward to this one quite a bit, even though I said I wasn't too into the Europa League at points. I'm just looking forward to Brighton actually playing. I hope it doesn't go too one-sided to the start. I'd like a competitive fixture. What do you think?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know how to feel. I woke up this morning and I didn't really feel anything, which was I just
Nice.
think because it's the disbelief. No, but I've had the excitement like building up, and now as the day goes on, I think I'm just getting more and more excited, especially knowing I'm going to be there at that standing at the top of that West Upper.
Yeah.
It's just the only. I mean, there's rumours that Dunk's injured, which is a shame, but other than that, I just can't wait. I just think it's just going to be a great occasion. And I think I'm probably going to cry. I'll try not to. I probably will cry.
Yeah.
But yeah,
No chance of
amazing.
crying. The only cries will be tears of joy when Lamptey bangs one from 40 yards.
Yeah.
Right, yeah, so we're going to look at the history, the recent history, and up to date, looking at why Brighton have been so successful so far in the journey from the bottom divisions all the way to the top in our founding. So Jack's going to kick this one off with the history, the old history of the club.
Yep. Okay, so yeah, before we dive into that, I just want to again say thank you to any support on the first two episodes. If you haven't seen them, they're on our channels below. So please check them out. We put a lot of work into them, and if you've got any interest in Wenger or Cruyff, we'll be covering other individuals in the future and more club deep dives. This is just a special occasion because of what day it is today. So yeah, any support would be greatly appreciated, and we'll dive right into it. So at the end of the 19th century, professional football in Sussex was created by a man called Edgar Everest, which is quite appropriate as Brighton have had one hell of a mountain to climb. Edgar was a Sussex FA official who founded the very first version of Brighton FC in 1987. Have I done it again? 1897. After a couple of collapses, Brighton United was formed by John Jackson, who had been manager of the first attempt of forming a club by Everest. The Seven Stars, which is a pub on Ship Street, would be the destination for the forming of a new Brighton and Hove United on the 24th of June 1901. Hove FC, who was a local rival, were unhappy with the name choice, so the concern decided on a new name of Brighton and Hove Albion FC, as we know today. It's a bit of a mystery as to why Albion was chosen. The only club at the time with Albion as their suffix was West Bromwich, but no connection between the two clubs have been made since. So, interesting. Players were dressed in all blue jerseys with white shorts in their first season and didn't change into the classic blue and white stripes until 1904. Both Brighton and Hove Albion and Hove FC played a few games each at the Goldstone in 1902, Goldstone Ground, which they both shared before Hove FC folded a couple of years later, leaving Brighton being able to lease the ground for themselves. In 1910, Brighton won the Southern Premier Division, where they beat their only rivals at the time in Swindon Town, which, again, a bit odd, considering we know that we don't think Swindon's that close to us at all. To be fair, we haven't looked at how close they are, but I don't think they're very close at all.
No, what was this Southern Division then? I can't remember too much. I know you went through it yesterday, but for the people that only heard it for the first time.
It was essentially, so the Football League formed in 1889 and it had 12 founder members, and you had to basically be a big club. The thing is, about this time as well, if you look at, like, I don't want to go too much into politics and stuff, but voting and stuff like that was a little bit flawed as well. They didn't have, they had like secret voting and stuff like that. So I guess at football clubs as well, it was kind of like who had the money at the time, who had ownership rights and all that, and they were, I guess, essentially the biggest 12 in the, or I guess maybe even the first 12 in the country were put into the Football League. And so everyone else had to create their own leagues to try and get their way into it via appeal, because there was no like there was promotion through the regional divisions, but there was no promotion. It seemed to get into the Football League. It seemed like an appeal-based thing. So Brighton, as I said, they were put into the third division, and by 1910 they finally won. So they got put into the third division in 1902. So it took them 8 years to get to the top division and win it. But again, this is obviously just regional divisions. And yeah, we'll get into in a bit how they got into the Football League. Cool. So they had John Robson as manager in 1910 when they won the title, and they achieved their only national honour as well to date when they won the FA Community Shield in 1910. Now again, this was different because nowadays you have to win either the Premier League or the FA Cup, or if the same team wins both, the second team in the Prem gets in. Back then it was basically like a North East South thing. And Villa won the North section, Brighton won the South section. And they played each other at Stamford Bridge, where Brighton won 1-0 in the final. And Brighton were dubbed as champions of England because of this, because of the whole North-South thing, which, again, is a little bit controversial. But at the time, there was a football league, but there wasn't a proper big-scale thing. So I guess
I quite like
technically
that.
Were.
I quite like having the best of North versus the best of South. I can imagine the fans as well. That would be quite fun. It's like when everyone gets together and supports England, I suppose, but you would have it on the South versus the North, and of course in England you get that stuff already. I think that would have been sick.
Yeah. Although it means we'll get onto it in a minute. Our local rivals would be on our side. I'm not sure if I like that. So it was also around this time that the fans of Brighton adopted a certain song called "Sussex by the Sea" as their anthem. This was also sung in Flanders Fields in World War One. Where many supporters, the groundsman, and 4 players, including Bob Whitling, sadly lost their lives. So big support from those lot representing the club. Now we're going to talk about how we got into the Football League. So it took 10 years after Brighton's success in 1910 for us to be put in the Division 3 South section in 1920. So we would have, as I said, got through an appeal stage because we should have been put in 1910 because we won the league title, but we weren't. So it took another 10 years for us to be put into the Football League. I don't know why, but it just did. As there was only one promotion spot as well at the time, the supporters' main interest came from the FA Cup, with the club becoming known as a giant killer. We beat teams such as Chelsea and Everton in years in the 20s or whatever. And a cup game against West Ham in 1933 drew in a crowd of 32,310 fans, which is a pretty massive crowd. And it was a record that wouldn't be beaten at the Goldstone until 1958. So it just shows at the time that, I guess, in between wars, things like football and sport are a massive relief at the time, and massive use of entertainment and just feeling, just a good time really, because of all the stuff that had been going on. So talk about the wars a little bit more. Charlie Webb managed the team for a crazy 28 years between 1919 and 1947, a record spell still to this day. And during the war times, when they had war regulations from the FA, Webb had to call on players from other clubs in the area and sometimes even soldiers in the crowd to complete an 11.
It's just crazy, isn't it? Yeah. I just don't see... well, as you said, I think football at that time was more recreational, so it wasn't as competitive. But I was saying, I think it's crazy that the league still went on when most of the people who were playing for these teams would have gone and fought in the wars.
Yeah, I reckon, I think about this earlier, I reckon it couldn't have been like physical injuries, maybe. It must have been more mental injuries.
Maybe. From
the war. So people might have had to pull out through mental health reasons. So they were still physically fit to play.
Yeah.
And I guess it gives them, obviously that would be a great, obviously it doesn't get over the things from war, but by playing sport and being part of a team, you still get that buzz.
Yeah.
So I guess maybe from that respect, it was good for those soldiers. 1948 saw the return of football after World War II, with attendances soaring across the country. Brighton averaged 11,000 each week, But this was the only time in their history that they finished bottom of the Football League. However, again, because of the whole lack of relegation and promotion thing, Brighton were voted back into the Football League by its original members. So we've got to be we feel a bit lucky there, because it could have been a dodgy time in non-league for us.
Super League vibes written all over it now, isn't it?
Yeah. People put in the comments saying, "Oh, Brighton are lucky to have all this success now." 1948, yeah. Well, times are different, and you need to look at your club, because your club might have been saved as well at some point. The 50s were a great time for the Albion, playing brilliant attacking football and looking like they could be promoted most seasons. So as I said, we're still in the third division at this point, and 0 promotions to our name. For example, in 1956, under the management of Billy Lane, they won 29 league games and scored 112 goals, which is still a club record. But they only finished second to Leyton Orient that year, so they had to miss out. As I said, it's a bit like Notts County. They had to win the playoffs this last year in the National League. They got 107 points.
Yeah,
crazy that. Yeah, 112 goals doesn't get you up. But in 1958, they finally were promoted to the second division. In the final game of the season, when Albion only needed a draw, a young reserve forward of the name of Adrian Thorne managed to score 5 goals in a 6-0 thrashing of Watford at the Goldstone to seal the league title. So what a way to do it.
Exactly.
Need a draw, win 6-0.
I think it's mad that the Goldstone's that old. I didn't realise. I mean, it's obvious now I think back at it, but starting at 1902 in this place, and we saw it out until how long? 1980? Or is
1997.
1997. It's just mad. It's just mad.
Yeah, we've only had 3 permanent stadiums in our history, which is crazy. Some clubs have had more, some clubs have had less, to be fair. So I think like Sheffield United have always been at Bramall Lane, which is mental.
That is crazy. That's true.
Yeah. So the club has had many nicknames in the past. So the club was famously called the Dolphins, and some even say the Seahorses. Do you know why we were called the Dolphins?
I guess that it's because the Dolphins at the Marina, or the aquarium in Brighton. That's currently the Sea Life Centre. I don't know if you can confirm that.
I think that's part of the reason, yeah. And I think another thing is about the county we're from, Sussex. I'm pretty sure a dolphin is meant to be like, or at these times, back then or whatever, the dolphin was like the symbol for Sussex.
Okay.
I think that's changed over time now, because I know the cricket team have got sharks on them, and obviously we're the seagulls. So I don't know what the symbol is for Sussex anymore, but yeah, I think it used to be dolphins back then. So now obviously for the last 47 years it's been called the Seagulls, with many thinking the origin has just come from the popular bird that the city is known for. However, it's more to do with their fiercest rivals, Crystal Palace, and how that rivalry came about in the mid-70s, which we're about to talk about. So, Crystal Palace, who had long been called the Eagles, were on a downward spiral, having faced back-to-back relegations before they started their 1974-75 campaign in Division 3 against Brighton. So we've skipped over a little bit of time here. Brighton have obviously been relegated back down to Division 3. It's 1975, and Brighton are about to play Palace. There's no rivalry at this point, but things are about to get heated. So it's at the Goldstone. So this was the first game of note where several outbreaks of violence occurred after a very tight affair, which Brighton won 1-0. This would be a day to remember, as the same game the following year, so now in 1976, Brighton supporters were heard chanting Seagulls in response to the away fans' chant of Eagles. Now, I will say, this is probably one of the only things that bugs me a little bit about Brighton in their history, as we've kind of stole a nickname. However, it suits the city really well, so it's one of those weird ones.
I don't feel like we've stolen a nickname. I think it's quite fun, that sort of thing. I mean, I can think of things that bug me a little bit more in our history that we'll get to.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, I just think it's one of those things that we've kind of forced a rivalry. But I guess if the year before there was a bit of violence, then maybe not. Maybe we're trying to better them as the better bird.
Yeah, I'm not sure if seagulls are much of a better bird, but it's a more fitting one for us, I suppose.
what I was about to say. Is if they generally had a fight in real life, the Eagles winning every time. I know Seagulls are vicious in Brighton, but
Vicious if they're going off the chips, but apart from that, I think they're pretty.
an Eagle is demolishing a Seagull.
Yeah.
Anyway, so yeah, Brighton were once again victorious in that game, winning 2-0. But it was the following season where the rivalry would really get heated. So we had back-to-back seasons where the rivalries just turned up a notch. But this is the one where it really gets going.
Sure.
So both Brighton and Palace would both be promoted out of the third division at the end of the 1976-77 season. But it was the FA Cup tie between the sides that made the rivalry permanent. So after 2 games in 4 days, when neither side could win, a third game had finally been arranged for the two teams, because at this time there was no extra time or penalties. It was all FA Cup replays. So a third game finally got arranged after several weeks of bad weather, and it was to be played on neutral ground at Stamford Bridge, which is obviously where Brighton famously won that 1910 title. So the two figures at the heart of this rivalry were the managers of both teams. So Terry Venables was manager of Crystal Palace at the time, and Alan Mullery was manager of Brighton and Hove Albion. The two men were former teammates at Tottenham, and they fought over the captaincy, which Mullery won as players. And that started a rocky relationship for them, which spilled over into their respective managerial careers. In the decisive game, Palace took the lead, but Brighton were given the chance to score from the penalty spot late on. Brian Hortons, who was Brighton captain at the time, stepped up and scored the penalty. But for some reason, unknown, the goal was disallowed. So it had to be retaken. So I guess the only thing, like you said, it could have been encroachment.
Yeah, I can't think of anything else. Or maybe the ball was not properly at the spot, but then it wouldn't have been taken. It's a weird one, isn't it? It's weird that it's not been reported.
Yeah, exactly. So the penalty was retaken, and Palace goalkeeper Paul Hammond saved it, and Palace went on to win 1-0. Brighton were also aggrieved by a disallowed goal from legendary striker Peter Ward after Palace had scored. Again, no reason given for that. Could have been offside. Don't know. Okay. Could have been a foul in the build-up. Who knows? Anyway, so Mullery at full-time confronted the referee, visibly angered by his decisions, and Mullery wasn't finished there. He flipped a V sign at the Palace fans and went into the Palace changing room and threw his change at the Palace players and staff after a fan had poured his cup of tea as Mullery was leaving the pitch all over him. He was reported saying that Palace ain't worth that in reference to the change that he threw. Any thoughts on that one, Jacob?
Yeah, you gotta love it, don't you? It's footballing stories. That's what it is. Yeah. I don't think there's many things nowadays that could happen to that. I think the only one that springs to mind is Pizzagate. But I think, it's proper petty stuff, isn't it?
Yeah. Because when I grew up, I thought it was Venables who threw the tea over Mullery for then Mullery to start the change, but no. So Venables didn't really do anything in this situation other than, be there and be aggrieved. It's all Mullery's anger towards the full-time whistles. So
we don't know what was said on the touchline, to be fair.
Well, that is true. So a rivalry was formed, and it has grown ever since. And as stated previously, Brighton were promoted to the second division in that year with Palace. Mullery was obviously manager, and Peter Ward hit a record 36 goals, which is still a record today in a single season. And we don't think that's going to be beaten, as we're in the Premier League now. So it'll take a record.
Just to regress, did Mullery and Venables have a history at all?
Yeah, they were as players. Or... Yeah, they fought over the Tottenham captaincy, which Mullery won. Okay. And then that's sort of what, after that moment, their relationship became a little bit rocky, because I think Venables was a little bit jealous of Mullery.
So that carried over.
Yeah, that's kind of what sparked it. Brighton, as they were promoted, but they always showed determination to improve rather than be happy with just their one promotion. Their goal was now to reach the first division.
Cool.
In that year as well, I just want to quickly say that Palace sadly beat Brighton to the title by 1 point. We'll skip over that quickly. And it seems like Venables got his own back on Mallory quite a few times in their career as managers. Yeah. So Brighton were promoted just 2 years later. So we obviously were promoted in '77 to the second division, and 2 years after that we were promoted back. We were promoted up to the first division for the very first time, with a win at Newcastle, sealing promotion. Albion spent 4 years in the top division with highs and lows, with a high of finishing 13th, which wasn't broken until 2021, which we'll get onto, before finishing bottom the following season. So that's what I mean. It was very rocky. So, finishing 13th out of 22 1 year, and then the year after, we're bottom of the league and from the top division. The highlight, however, was a first and only major final for the club against Manchester United in 1983. Albion took the lead with Gordon Smith netting one early on, but then Albion found themselves 2-1 down late on in the game. Gary Stevens then took the game to extra time, which is a thing now. There was replays, but I'll get onto that in a minute. The final's gone to extra time with a fine strike from the edge of the box. And one of the most recognisable commentary lines to date, not just for Brighton, but in FA Cup history, came about when Gordon Smith had the opportunity to win the cup for Albion. The line goes, and Smith must score, but he only hit his effort into the path of the goalkeeper. And then back then, as I said, penalty shootouts weren't used, so a replay was sadly needed a few days later. And Brighton, even though they drew the first game 2-2, got absolutely battered in the second game 4-0. So it was a missed opportunity for Albion, but it's an achievement that I think we can still be proud of today, and it's something that a lot of fans still talk about today. And we've got to 2 recent FA Cup semi-finals. Obviously, last year, losing to Man United again on penalties, and 4 years before that, 1-0 against Manchester City. But I mean, that's Manchester City for you.
No one expected, I don't think, to progress any further than that. As soon as you draw them, it's tricky.
And not only that, even if we'd beaten Man United on penalties last year, we would have then been tasked to try and stop City's treble, which I don't think was necessarily happening.
Well, we saw it when Manchester United played them.
Exactly. So that was the highlight of the 80s, and now we're going to head on to how we got into a sticky situation, let's say. So years of bad management from the board sent Brighton into a downward spiral, becoming a yo-yo team between the second division and first division in the 80s. Second division and third division in the 80s, and a mess of a club in the 90s. Bill Archer and David Bellotti are the main culprits for this, as they sold the Goldstone Ground, home of the Albions, between 1902 and 1997 without the fans' permission. Albion's last season at the Goldstone Ground would be a miraculous one, as when Steve Gritt took over in December 1996, Albion were 12 points away from safety. So we were gone. We were gone at this point. Steve Gritt comes in. And we've never experienced that at fans having such a perilous position like that. I don't think we have had one recently
in the Championship. To be fair,
yes, but not to this level.
Yeah, not quite to the level where your club might dissolve. But I mean, I was slightly struggling to understand how it would mean if we get relegated all of a sudden. The situation with the stadium can lead to like 8 relegations, but I suppose it's what Bury fans would have been feeling at the time when that sort of thing was going on, and clubs that have unfortunately collapsed.
Yeah, and I think this really obviously will hit home to everyone who's going tonight, who's sort of in their 30s, 40s or above. That how special the fact we're in Europe now is, considering. I mean, as I said, we were born early 2000s. Yeah, this is literally a couple of years before we were born, so very recent history still. So in the final game at the Goldstone, so obviously Brighton started to come back with wins and started to claw back that 12-point deficit. Final game at the Goldstone, Stuart Storer scored the winner in a 1-0 win against Doncaster Rovers which moved Brighton off the foot of the table for the first time since that October. So we've been bottom of the league for 6 months,
That's crazy.
just dead and buried. And we're finally off the bottom with one final game to go. So now we headed to Hereford, who have just gone below us in the table. So it's a relegation shootout. We only needed a draw due to our win against Doncaster. And Hereford took the lead for an own goal through Kerry Mayer. So he must have been absolutely gutted. He was young at the time as well. I think he was 20 years old. And 20-year-old defender scores an own goal.
That's tough.
Clubs going into administration, it seems, at this point, or maybe even just dissolves. But luckily, the hero that we have to thank today still is Robbie Reynolds, who scored the decisive equaliser, and Brighton was saved from probable extinction, and the climb up the Football League could start. So you can't get closer than that to basically not existing. And luckily, we got the goal we needed. Hereford, as I said, they're still around, but I'm pretty sure they're in like the National League North or something.
Yeah.
So they're not having the best of times. But who cares? It's about Brighton. Sorry, Hereford fans. Anyway, so Dick Knight, who was a local businessman, led a council of Brighton fans and was made chairman of the club in 1997. With the Goldsmiths ground obviously being sold, they had no home stadium to go to, so Brighton fans had to make a 150-mile round trip to Gillingham for 2 seasons, because whilst the council of Brighton fans were looking for a place that they could play in Brighton. So luckily they only had to wait 2 years before they were put back in Brighton at Withdean, which is a local athletics track. Jacob, what would you say? How would you describe Withdean?
It really is a local athletics track. It's not like a stadium or anything like that. There's one stand. I mean, when we used to go as kids, there was 3 temporary stands, wasn't there? And they were made out of metal, and you'd bang your feet on the bottom, and it would make a rattling noise. It was great at the time. But no, I'm surprised by how many people actually fit in there. You were saying there was like 30k
about
people at some point.
No, 6,000.
Was it just 6?
Yeah.
That makes more sense. Okay.
Yeah, Goldston and Amex were 30,000, but Withdean was about 6.
I mean, now it's used for sports days at schools. Like it's low in terms of sports facilities. I think at the moment AFC Van Dinians are playing there, so they play. To be fair, I think they're Isthmian, but it's nothing close to what Brighton were at the time, and I can't imagine it'll ever go back to that sort of thing.
You'd have to like massively upgrade the facilities there, because like you would never have a championship team playing there again. No. We're about to talk about obviously what we did at Withdean, and we had a couple of years in the championship there. And yeah, you just wouldn't think nowadays a championship. I mean, you look at Luton, the regulations they've had to do just to get in the Prem. If you go to Brighton and you go to Withdean, you cannot play football there, especially at that level. It's just crazy. Anyway, so Brighton had many successful years at Withdean, with 4 promotions, including a playoff victory in 2004 at the Millennium Stadium in Cardiff, and they were crowned League One champions twice. In 2002 and in 2011, which we'll get onto in a little bit, under a certain manager called Gus Poyet. 2009, though, was a very important year for the club, as Tony Bloom, who was a billionaire who made his money through poker and data analysis, and more importantly, had been a fan for over 30 years as his time at the club. He became chairman. Dick Knight let Bloom take over after Bloom agreed to personally fund the works needed to build Brighton's new and current home, the Amex. So
should I take over from it?
Yeah, that's what I've got for the foundations. Nice. Now we're going to get into the fun stuff.
Yeah, the fun stuff being the recent history. So now it's not going to be quite as separated, because it's really important for where we are right now. So just a little bit on Tony Bloom then. Yeah, Brighton-born, Brighton fan. He started off as a trader in the financial market, but he moved on to poker. So I've found he's won about £3 million in live tournament earnings as a poker player. Wow. And he's been nicknamed the Lizard for his cold-blooded antics on the table.
Yeah.
It was introduced to the Asian betting market, which had prominent handicap systems. Did you want to explain what handicaps are?
I don't really understand them myself.
Okay, cool.
You know?
A little bit. So handicap's basically the way of leveling a fixture that is one-sided.
Oh, is it like the +1 and like the -1? So like when you bet on Man City, like when you bet on the opponents of Man City, they get like a +2, like 2-0 lead or whatever, and it's like whether they can hold on and win. Or
I'm not 100%. I just know the system's there for odds to look a bit better for you to bet on certain teams than what they actually are. And he was able to earn millions through value betting and proprietary betting in a syndicate, which is Star Lizard. So there's not much known about Star Lizard, but Star Lizard was then founded in 2006. And so, as you said, in 2009 he bought a 75% stake and pumped £93 million in to build the MX. So he's gone from 3 million earnings in poker to all of a sudden pumping in 93 million. So Star Lizard's obviously gone and done things.
Yeah.
Like, I think he's banned on quite a lot of sites now as well for abusing that sort of thing. I know you were quite interested in this sort of thing. The idea is that you look at the different odds that different people are giving you, different brokers are giving you, and you're able to calculate more accurate results. And if you get better value from the brokers than what you've calculated, then you tend to put money on it. And over the course of lots of money, you can make quite a bit, which he obviously did. So in the 2009-10 season, Brighton had won just 3 out of their 5 games. Wait, that's pretty good, isn't it? So they'd actually won 3 out of their 5 games, but found ourselves 20th on goal difference in November. So Russell Slade, who managed to keep us up last season, he gets sacked. So Steve Coppell decides not to take the job, and Gus Poyet comes in, and he manages to drag the Albion up to a 13th place finish, and that is Lewis Dunk's debut season as well, which is quite important. And then Brighton go on to win the league the next year in 2010-2011. Can you remember much about that year?
Well, 2010-2011?
Yes.
Yeah,
I can remember a little bit.
I can remember a little bit as well. I mean, just quickly, when you said Dunk's debut, my very first game in the programme, it said 6 of the best, and it was talking about youth prospects, and the only one who really made it was Lewis Dunk. So I think it's really cool that I've got. I think I've still got that programme somewhere, and it's before he's made an appearance, and it's kind of a special programme. I think pretty sure it's the first programme to mention his name, so that's pretty cool.
Okay, that's basic.
But yeah, the 2010-2011 season. I remember we just absolutely dominated. Generally, like for a long period of the season. I know it's the only season I think where we won every game in a month, especially with it being 8 in a row in March, which was crazy. Like to have 8 games in March and win all of them was amazing to set us up for promotion. I only went to a couple games that season, but. Yeah, we were just flying. I think Murray must have been top goal scorer. I don't know if you did.
Murray was playing for us at that point, yeah.
Yeah, and yeah, no, I just remember us and Southampton going up, and we went obviously up as champions. But yeah, I think we were comfortable for a long time in that league.
Yeah. I can't remember much. I can remember being really jealous that my friend was going to the last game with secure promotion. Me not going. But it's quite a while ago, to be fair. I mean, I've got very little memories, to be fair, of the Withdean. A lot of it was against Sheffield Wednesday, because my dad's at Sheffield Wednesday Sports, so we would go to them games. Remember Kazenga Luwalawa bicycle kick. I remember a training day where I got his signature and things like that. That was quite fun.
Very cool.
But it was good times, man. I think maybe because I was so young that I didn't really care too much about the football that was going on, but I enjoyed it so much. But it's only time then, isn't it, to move on to the Amex period, the American Express Community Stadium. And we finished 10th in our debut season. And just a special note, I remember playing FIFA 11, I think it was, on my PlayStation Portable. And I used to sign this striker called Craig McHale-Smith for Brighton.
What a man.
He signed for Brighton in that season. And that's the first time I've ever gone, wow, we're signing someone I actually want, which is crazy. Craig McHale-Smith, what a man, a bit of a journeyman striker.
I think we signed him from Peterborough United, and then they started having bit of a history of producing these strikers. They've obviously had like Ivan Toney. I think they might have had Ollie Watkins. I'm not sure. They had someone else. It might not have been Watkins, but they had someone else in that spell of just producing these really good strikers. I mean, by the way, right, Craig McCall-Smith is probably quite far off Ivan Toney's level, but
yes.
Craig McCall-Smith for us was just amazing. Like,
yeah.
Oh.
It was good.
It was good fun. I'm gonna reference his song. I just can't get enough.
So that season, I can remember you probably went to a lot more games than me. Of course, I went to the first competitive game. I unfortunately wasn't there for the first non-competitive. I know the first non-competitive, it was Fatboy Slim opening, I think, because they all had the Fatboy Slim flags that they were waving around. I would have loved to have been there, but I did go to the first opening game against Doncaster. I can remember that, a rainy night. We all had flags as well, Brighton flags this time, that were waving before the game. I've got 3 still. And that game, what can you remember from that game?
Well, I'm jealous. It's one of the only, like, in terms of like firsts in our recent history, it's one of the only firsts that I wasn't witness of. And I was gutted. I just remember being, as I said, I was on a train. On my way back from my nan's, she lived in Hassett, which is like a small town, like, I don't know, 20 minutes from Brighton. And my dad just called me out of the blue because he just wanted to see how I was doing. And I was like, "Oh, Dad, have you got a computer nearby?" Because my signal was awful on the train. And he was like, "Yeah, sure." And he was like, "What's the Brighton score right now?" And he was like, "Oh, it's 1-1." I can't remember who scored Doncaster, but he was like, "Oh, Buckley's come on and he scored in the 83rd minute for Brighton." And I was like, "Okay, cool." He was like, "Yeah, but it's in the 95th minute, so I'd probably drawn." And I'm like, "Okay, it's fine." So then we just went off topic, talking for a couple minutes. And then I was just talking about something, and he was like, "Oh my God." I was like, "What?" I was just like, he just interrupted me straight. He was like, no way. I was like, "What, Dad? What's going on? Like, what's going on?" I was really worried, like something had happened in the house or whatever. He was like, "No, Will Buckley has scored in the 97th minute." I thought, shut up. Shut the front door. I couldn't believe it. And then I had to get home and watch those highlights of all those flags waving. And then when you watch the goal, I mean, they still show it at the Amex today. It is beauty. Ball through, and he just tucks it away. Oh, it's absolutely amazing memories.
I'm glad I was there. I can remember the ref being a bit of a pain. He was... Well, you never remember if you remember it quite right, or how it really went. But I remember him being particularly favourable to Doncaster. And Will Buckley was my favourite player after that. I remember Craig Neen having a particularly good game as well. It was good. Good times. But it's mad to go from the League One all the way up to 10th. So fair play to Gus Poyet there. And then the next season we managed to finish 4th. So that's the 12-13 season. So we've gone promotion to 10th, all the way up to 4th. And of course, we draw Crystal Palace in the playoffs. And the first match goes well. Brighton fans are feeling confident. 0-0 at Selhurst. So you'd think the favourable team going into it would be Brighton playing at home. But of course, he turns up as always. Wilfried Zaha hit a double against us, as he always does. He always performs against us. It's annoying. And then after that, Gus Poyet had a bit of a fit. And he said certain stuff. Do you remember what he said?
I think he was basically saying that Brighton would never be promoted to the Premier League. They'd never break that ceiling if they didn't spend more money. And he had basically taken the club as far as he could. And
he was really outspoken with this. He got suspended for that, and then ultimately he gets sacked whilst he's on live television, which I can remember. I thought that was crazy. I thought it was really harsh.
Yeah, and I said you might see that nowadays, but I can't really remember a recent example of that. It was also one of the first times I think Brighton got serious media attention for a while. Like, obviously we've been doing well in the league and stuff, but like, we were like national papers and all that because of the way it occurred, and it was big talking point. And people thought that we might go back into a bit of downward spiral again, like in the 90s, because obviously we still had Tony Bloom at the helm, who was running the club well, but it was such a weird thing to do and such a rogue thing to do on national TV. Yeah, I think we got a lot of stick for it, but you know,
because he was so successful for us, successful.
Yeah.
It's just a shame. But 13-14, in steps former Barcelona player Oscar Garcia. He's quite famous with Brighton fans. We've had some great managers. And on the last day of the season, we're sat in 7th. So we're behind Reading on 70 points to our 69. And also scrapping for that last promotion spot are Blackburn, but they need Reading and Brighton to lose and to make up a goal difference of 7 on Reading, which isn't impossible. We've seen things happen, but 7 is tough. Okay, so Reading have the difficult task of taking on Burnley on the final day, who have already guaranteed promotion themselves through 2nd. So they're already up. And we travel to Nottingham Forest. We're not even at home, and they're just 4 points below us on 11th. In the 16th minute, Kieran Trippier sends the ball into his own goal to give Reading the lead. And you can only imagine in the stadium, head in hands moments, man. You're thinking it's over. But Burnley do find the other net in the 20th minute, thanks to a finish from Scott Arfield, who I've not heard his name for a while. In the 22nd minute of the Amex, Thomas Kuszczak makes an error that leads to Matt Derbyshire finding the net with his head. So it's not going well at all. As I said, head in hands moments. But some good news hits the stadium when Danny Ings fires the visitors in front in the 28th minute. And then at least it's in Brighton's hand going forwards. Some relief hits as Stephen Ward puts the Albion level in the 53rd minute, but Reading are also active with McCleary scoring a 20-yard volley. So now it's drawing at Reading, and we're drawing as well with Forest. Time's running out, and Reading looks set to see the playoffs. And Luar hits a 25-yard effort, which fractionally ends up going wide. And Will Buckley really comes close to rounding the goalkeeper as well, but the latter clutches the ball from Buckley's feet just before. In the dying embers of the game, there's enough time for one last Brighton attack. Luar drives the ball inside between 2 Forest players to find Craig McHale-Smith out wide. He cuts inside and in-swings a ball in towards Ajoa. The Argentine had been wasteful so far, but redeems himself by finding the back of the net with his head, and Brighton takes 6th place from the clutches of Reading and once again see the playoffs. What a moment, Jack.
I think, as I said, I was thinking, I remember exactly where I was. Sadly, again, I wasn't at the game. I've not celebrated a goal more in my life, other than, I would say, McAllister's penalty last year, which we will get onto in a bit. But I don't think I've ever celebrated a goal more than that. I remember screaming the house down just because of how frustrating the game was. And recently as well, my granddad, I won't suggest doing this, but I mean, I know loads of people do it anyway. My granddad had just told me about like illegal streaming, so I'd finally started watching football on that season on the computer or whatever. And yeah, I remember just seeing that ball go in, and I mean, I couldn't believe my uncle was there. He still says to this day it's the best away day he's ever had in his life. He's been to like Premier League games and stuff like that. And my favourite thing about that goal was, we mentioned earlier, Craig McHale-Smith had been out injured for about 8 months that season. It's an absolute horrible injury. Had really struggled to come back, and I'm pretty sure that was his like proper first game, or one of the first games back, or whatever. It was basically his key moment back, his first real contribution to the team back, and you couldn't have asked for a better ball in. It's an absolute delightful ball, and what a moment.
Oh, it's so good. I rewatched that video so many times, man. It's just the in towards the shower, and then the header.
And also it's Luar grabbing the camera.
Yeah.
Luar screaming into the camera. Oh, so good.
Oh, so good, man. There's not many moments. Yeah. And yeah, that puts us 6th. So we draw Derby, and we get to host them first. And in the 17th minute, Jesse Lingard fires the Albion ahead, which is crazy. We've had some good players. But Chris Martin takes a step away from Coldplay to step up when it mattered and put away a penalty. So he draws them up. Chris Martin's lethal because he puts Derby County ahead after his effort bounces off the crossbar into the back of Kuszczak, and they go up before half-time. And Brighton lose that game 2-1, unfortunately. And then they batter us 4-1 at their place just to make it worse.
Yeah, with Luar scoring for Brighton in that game.
Yeah, but it was a bit of consolation.
I think Forest were happy, to be fair, because, I don't know, Derby were Forest's biggest rivals, so I don't know how they were feeling. They weren't in the promotion hunt anyway when we scored that goal, but they've just seen their team go to the playoff final instead of Brighton, so I don't know how they'd be feeling off that.
Well, QPR went on to beat them. Just weirdly, I can't remember anything from them Derby games. I've completely erased them from my memory. I'll probably watch them,
I remember watching the first one, and I was gutted we lost that. Well, I know they finished third, but I was just especially the way we had won I got into the playoffs. I thought, please. And then I think I was out for the second game, and I just looked it up on my phone and saw it were 4-0 down or something. I thought, that's just it. I'm not going to look. But at least the former Brighton player denied them. Like you said, QPR just jogged my memory that it was Bobby Zamora's goal in that final.
Was it?
So yeah, Bobby Zamora scored the winner. Anyway, that's going off a tangent.
So 6-2 on aggregate. Oscar Garcia resigns, so we get a year of him. Do you remember, there used to be rumours about someone sleeping with Oscar Garcia's wife, but I don't know whether that was ever confirmed to be true. I don't know what happened, to be honest.
Yeah, I know he also had health issues, and he also, not long after that, had a short spell at Watford before, again, this time definitely resigning through health. I know he left Watford through health issues. But he had a lot of heart issues.
Right.
And so he had to. I think he retired from football in terms of management quite young. But I don't know what he's doing now. I think he's still involved in football in some way.
Okay.
But I don't think he's a coach anymore.
So 14-15 season, Sami Hyypiä steps in, and he manages just 3 wins from his 21 games in charge before getting sacked. He is the only manager I've ever seen at Brighton where I thought this guy's not good enough after going to a game. And I think it was the second game of the season. The football was woeful. It's the worst manager I've ever seen take over Brighton. Yeah. Of course, we've been blessed. But my word, we were so bad. But at least Chris Hughton steps in. At least Chris Hughton steps in. What can you remember from Sami Hyypiä's football?
I was going to say, I think it's the one time where Bloom's made a gamble and it's gone wrong at this club in terms of like a managerial decision. And I don't even think he was. Yeah, I don't even think he was. I mean, it was. I mean, if you bet on 5 football matches, they're not necessarily all going to win. So it was the one outlier where it just didn't work. His football was atrocious. I remember going to a couple games that year, but I couldn't tell you which ones. But I just remember. I think I know we were 21st or something like that when, or 20th maybe when Hughton took over. And I think around that time, just before Christmas, I think we went up to Rotherham, and Rotherham would blow us in the table. We lost 1-0 to them, and I thought, okay, we're really in trouble now. If we're not scoring against Rotherham, let alone getting some points against them, I thought this is really, really bad.
That season, man.
And before we talk about Hughton, for the rest of that season, I've got a fun fact of that year.
Yep.
That Lewis Dunk was our top goal scorer with 5 goals.
He got 7. 7.
Oh, 7 goals.
Apparently the top league was João Teixeira with 7. That I had a look at. I can't remember him scoring that many goals. João Teixeira being from Liverpool, but no, it was woeful. 7 goals from your centre back, and it wasn't even that he was clinical, was it? It's just we kept launching in set pieces. It was so. I remember the banter that we used to get for having Lewis Dunk as our top goal scorer. Never again.
Yeah,
it was bad. Chris Hughton manages to get us to 20th. Of course, 22nd, 23rd, and 24th went down. We did finish ahead of the relegations by 6 points, so we were quite safe. It was 43-point season. We were right.
Yeah.
And then in the 15-16 season, Brighton earned 89 points, tying with Middlesbrough. Middlesbrough taking second on goal difference by 2, putting us in third, and then Brighton have to play Sheffield Wednesday in the playoffs. And I've got really bad mememories of that. We went to Hillsborough first. Can
we just quickly talk about the Middlesbrough game? Because Mike Dean, I don't like to have a go at refs too much here, but Mike Dean had an absolute mare that game. So we're going to the final day needing to win. Middlesbrough only need a draw, and you can imagine second versus third for that promotion spot. I think Burnley. I know Burnley were already up. They could have won the league that day. I think Burnley were already promoted. I'm not sure. So we had to play them, and then if I remember rightly, I think Middlesbrough scored first. I couldn't remember who it was. Dale Stevens then equalised early in the second half for Brighton.
Yeah.
And then for some reason, Steven gets a red card for. It's a sort of late tackle. I understand that, but 1, he's got a yellow card in his hand, the ref, and 2, the player has got no shin pad on. So Which later
It was high.
changes his decision to red. Yeah, but so Mike Dean has got a yellow out. He's about to book him, and the Middlesbrough player knocks the yellow card out of his hand.
Yeah.
Doesn't even grab his arm or whatever. Knocks the yellow card out of his hand. Pulls down his sock. Shows that he's bleeding, and then rather than punish the Middlesbrough player for knocking the card out of his hand, Mike Dean's like, "All right then, red," and Stevens is off. And we dominated the rest of that game, even though we had 10 men. But Middlesbrough just did well to hold on, and got denied. Anyway, talk about Sheffield Wednesday now because I'm fuming it.
I don't really want to talk about Sheffield Wednesday. It was the worst game experience, I think, ever for me. Because it was the injuries. It was how many subs did we have? We kept having to make subs because of injuries, and we ended up with like 10 men on the pitch, didn't we? Because we kept getting players injured. It was so unlucky.
I'm pretty sure the first game we lost 2-0 with a Gary
2-1.
Hooper goal. That was 2-1, sorry. And Gary Hooper, I'm pretty sure, scored in that game, and it was actually offside, but they didn't obviously have VAR at that time. It was quite clearly offside. So we're fuming about that in the first game, and then you're right. In the second game, we got 4 injuries in a space of 60 minutes and had to play the last half an hour with 10 men.
I turned off I turned that off. That's one of the only games I've ever turned off when watching Brighton. I couldn't hack it anymore. Brighton went on to draw that game, didn't they? And so nearly got back into it, but I didn't catch the equaliser. I had left by that point. I was just so gutted that it wasn't even that we'd been outplayed, it was just being so unlucky. I've never seen it before, having to play 10 men because of injuries. None of it being red cards or anything like that.
I don't think we'll ever see it in the Championship again, where a team misses out on automatic promotion on goal difference. Remember, then goes into the playoffs, loses the first leg due to a goal that was meant to be offside, and in the second leg gets 4 injuries in 60 minutes, and they're basically wiped out the game. Like the sequence of events that happen in that is ridiculous. If Mike Dean doesn't give the red card and we get a goal against Middlesbrough, the playoffs doesn't need to happen. But what I will say about this is, we weren't ready for the Premier League then, and I think I'm very, even though those memories are all horrible, I'm quite relieved we didn't get promoted that season, despite all of what we've just talked about.
Did you want to talk about the 16-17 season? Because I've got a feeling you're going to have more notes than me on this one.
Yeah, I can. So, I mean, what a season it was. I mean, I remember the last image of the season before was Liam Rosenior keeping his chin up, saying to the Brighton fans, and he is still well loved at Brighton because of that one moment. And it was an incredible start to the season. We went on a 21 game unbeaten streak, I'm pretty sure.
Sam Baldock on fire that year.
Yeah, absolutely amazing. We had Baldock, we had
Hamed. Was
Murray
next to him?
with Hamed.
Yeah,
we had Baldock, Murray, Hamed, and Knockhart were the top 4 goal scorers.
Yeah.
And they all got in over 10 each, I think, in the league, which is just ridiculous, to be fair.
Yeah.
Notable games were, there was early in the season, sadly, Knockhart had to fly to France because his father had died, and the players surprised him there, which was amazing to see them all turn up for the funeral. And the week, I think it was the week before the funeral, whatever, because they had a game. They played Bristol City, where Steve Sidwell scored with his left foot, his weaker foot, from the halfway line on 5th of November. So it was remember the day that Steve Sidwell scored from the halfway line. And more importantly, though, he ran to the side of the pitch with a shirt for Knockhart, which was amazing. You've got games against Birmingham, where I watched that and we were awful. I had this weird... It was a bit of a weird tangent. I had this weird thing where, especially that season, I'd go talk to the mirror in my bathroom and pray for a goal. Really weird. Bit weird to say that. But I remember specifically this game, we were shocking against Birmingham. And I remember it was 1-1, Knockhart got the equaliser, and I was assuming, I was like, right, I'm just gonna go to the toilet. And I was like, we need to win this game. Like, get a goal, whatever. I come back in the room, and it's like a late corner for Brighton. And I whip it in, and Murray absolutely bullet headers it, and then runs all the way to the length of the pitch to celebrate with the Albion fans. Amazing. My personal memory of that season, though, other than the promotion game against Wigan, was away at QPR. I went to 3 games in the space of 6 days in April. We beaten Blackburn at home. I think we beat Birmingham at home, and then we played QPR away, and I said to my uncle, I was like, if we get 9 points out of these 3 games, we're going up. We just will. And it was a really tight game. I think we won it 2-1 in the end. But my personal moment was we had a left back called Pocanoli who had never taken a free kick for Brighton in his life. And Knockhart was absolutely screaming at him, saying, like, no, this is my one. What are you doing? And then he was like, no, I'm going to take this one. And Knockhart basically stood back, said, like, go on, then hit it. And he smacked it underneath the underside of the bar, top bins. And I've never been in such a tight away end. There was about 5,000 of us in Loftus Road. And we just all went mental. And it was like, it was pandemonium. And we left that game on a Friday night thinking, yeah, we've done it. The week after, Knockout got 2 against Wolves, which then set up the Wigan game. Have you got any notes on the Wigan game? Or
No, all I've got is the last 2 games.
Okay. So yeah, on the Wigan game, we beat them 2-1. March got the first and Murray got the second. No, sorry, Murray got the first thing. March got the second. Yeah.
Yes, that rings.
And then Wigan scored in the 83rd minute to give us a bit of nervy. Wigan had already gone down at this point, so we were kind of thinking, okay, we've won this game. And then they scored, and it was a bit of a nervy 10. And then we were technically promoted, but we needed Derby to draw against Huddersfield, who had also had a very good season that year. Huddersfield in 3rd. And I remember we were singing, if Derby score, we'll be back on the pitch. Because obviously we'd already been on the pitch to celebrate, which was, practically promoted at this point. And I think it was Jacob Butterfield in the 80th minute or whatever equalised for Derby, and it was absolute limbs. It's the first time I've been showered in beer. Obviously, I was too young to drink, but there was about 4 pints thrown at me, and I didn't care. And we stayed there until about 7:30, celebrating on the pitch. And Lewis Dunk came out with one of those massive foam finger hands and was pointing with his shirt off and loving it. And I'm a bit gutted because we'd waited an hour later. All the Brighton players got on the train, so those fans that stayed even longer got to celebrate with Tony Bloom and Lewis Dunk, and they all went partying into the streets of Brighton. So, but to be fair, I was too young to drink, so I couldn't really join them. But,
such good memories, man.
Yeah.
Such good
Great
memories
season.
of that. It's just a shame the way it ended. I mean, it was the same. It was that season, wasn't it? Playing against Newcastle, where that Diarme goal went in. That was just watching Happy Gilmore. You've got to watch it if you haven't. It's so ridiculous.
I've never seen a more lucky goal in my life. It's taken about 4 deflections and somehow spun into the top corner. It's ridiculous.
He tried to, so it was fizzed. I think it was a shot that was fizzed across the box, and Diarme tried to move his foot out of the way, but it rolled up his leg and looped over. Was it Gaetan Bong in the far corner? Yeah. And he just went, oh, I've scored.
and Stockdale was full length save as well. He literally did as much as he could, and it was just still in the top bins.
Yeah, it's where we earned our nickname Bottle at Brighton, which, to be fair, I've not heard much, because we were 6 points ahead.
7 points with 3 games to go.
And then managed to lose it to Newcastle, which
although
pain.
The circumstance of that was horrible, because we went to we sealed promotion against Wigan. We went to Norwich, who had an okay season themselves. Norwich are usually yo-yo team, but I think they had finished 12th this year. I don't know.
Yeah.
They were doing okay. And Alex Pritchard, who that season was meant to be signing for Brighton in January, and did a U-turn in the final hours of the January window. Yeah, rejected Brighton, went to Norwich. He then struck 2 strikes in that game. One cannoned off the bar, one cannoned off the post, and David Stockdale got 2 own goals as we lost that 2-0, which is just absolutely ridiculously unlucky. And then I was at the final game of the MX that season, which you'll probably go on to, which is Bristol City, wasn't it? Which we were just, I mean, to be fair, the players were hungover. I think they were. I think, to be fair, it's not a good excuse, but they just were, and we were. I've not seen I don't think I saw a performance like that all season at home. We were just not.
It felt
there.
so cagey towards the end. All of the games, just sealing. It felt like we were. Did we struggle for form going into it as well? Because it felt like we just couldn't win games, and it's right at the end, you've put in all the hard work, you've put in the laps, and then right at the end, it's really struggling to put that ball in the back of the net and actually confirm it. It's how I felt at the time.
No, because as I said, when we April, I'm pretty sure we started with the 5 wins. As I said, I went to those 3 games,
Yeah.
including the QPR one, and then we beat Wolves, and then we beat Wigan. So to actually get promoted, we were clinical. We won like 5
Maybe
in a row.
it's just
But
me projecting then, because I was
but
so nervous going into games.
it was the sealing the title that was just
Yeah.
it just seemed so difficult.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'll talk about Bristol City. I'll let you talk about the Villa game, I guess, and you've got notes for that. And yeah, sad times.
Yep. I've got no more notes, Jack. So take it away.
Okay.
So take it away. They're all my notes. I kept it short and sweet because I knew I'd be blabbering on about random things.
Fair enough. So I remember obviously we lost to Bristol City. So at this point, we still just need a win, boys. Get the win. We've won the league. Happy days. So we go away to Aston Villa, and it's all looking good. And I think Newcastle played Barnsley, and they were like 5-0 up at like 60 minutes. So we're like, okay, fine. I think just before the first half whistle, though, we got given a penalty, and Glenn Murray stuck it away, and we were like, get in, we're going to do this. I was at the Amex Stadium because they did a beam back, which is where they show the game live to everyone.
Yeah.
And they opened up the West Lower, and there was about 6,000 of us just sat there watching it. And then in the 88th minute, Jack Grealish decides to have a little pop at goal. And it's quite far out, it's probably about 20 yards out or whatever. And it slips through Stockdale's hands and ends up in the back of the net. And we know that Newcastle are 5-0 up, so that game's done. So we need to somehow get a late winner to get the title, and it just doesn't come. And so the 2 home goals against Norwich, the disappointing performance against Bristol City, and then a Stockdale howler who had been pretty good all season cost us the league.
He had been. He'd earned us points though by himself, to be fair. I don't know if he necessarily cost it. I was so gutted when he decided not to follow us into the Prem as well.
Yeah, he did that for family reasons though, which I kind of get. Like he wanted to move to Birmingham for his daughters and stuff, so they could go to school and all that. So I was like, fair enough, but yeah, it was a shame. But to be fair, I was disappointed for about 10 minutes that we didn't win that league. Obviously, I still look back at it and think it's a shame. But like, I remember being on the day just being gutted for about 10 minutes and think, hang on, we're in the Premier League. Like, let's just forget about the disappointment of not winning the league title. We've been promoted to the Premier League. We've got Man United away next season. We've got Chelsea away next season. This is amazing. We've got to look forward to this. And it was a tough one to take. But as I said, we've been amazing all season. And it was a dream come true for us.
It was nice.
So it goes into the Premier League era.
It does. It does. I thought, how did you think we were going to get on? Because I was pretty sure we'd get relegated. So it was Newcastle, us, and Huddersfield going up. And I was fairly sure it was us and Huddersfield going back down as well. I didn't know too much for Newcastle. Of course, Newcastle hadn't been there for long, which helped. But yeah, I wasn't hopeful at all. I was sort of doing the classic promoted fan. Well, let's just enjoy it for a season because that's probably what we'll get. You know, I wasn't expecting much. Chris Hughton was still at the helm though. Ending the season in the way we did it was like, well, you know, I reckon we can get above Huddersfield, but I think that might be it. Like, we've shown that we're going to struggle at points. But what a time. I didn't go to the first game of the season, but I did go to the first home game, of course, with you. Can you remember who the first away game was?
Well, we actually went to the first win. We actually went to the second home game. Yeah, the first game of the season was against City, and we lost 2-0. But I mean, that was just expected.
I remember that. It was Aguero, wasn't it? And
then our first away game was Leicester City, where we managed to concede in the first minute of our away Premier League season to Okazaki, of all players. So yeah, that was great to think we've lasted this long. Or it might be in the second minute. Either way, it was ridiculously early in the game.
Yeah.
And then we got our first point in the Prem against Watford, where they had a man sent off for a horrific challenge on knockout, where we just couldn't put the ball in the back of the net, sadly. And then you brought us up to nicely the second home game, the first win, the first goal in the Premier League.
Yeah.
Against West Bromwich Albion. Can you name the two goal scorers for the 3 goals?
Well, I can name the most important one because I remember him cutting in, smacking the ball, driven into the bottom left corner, wasn't it? Pascal Gross, and we went crazy. and then we scored
Oh.
pretty soon after that, didn't we? And then it went
Yeah.
crazy again, and then again.
Yeah,
It was
it
nice.
it was a gross double. Do you know who got the third? You remember?
Oh no, was it Glenn Murray?
No, it is a striker though, not Glenn Murray.
Oh well, Hemed. Yeah.
Yeah. Tom Ahmed stuck a header away to make it 3-0, and it sort of, I remember it was like one of those ones where he sort of arrowed it, and the goalkeeper was like falling backwards, and he just couldn't clear out the top corner. It was a beautiful goal, and then and then they got one back, and we're a little bit nervy. Well, we're 3-0 up, but because we're new to Prem, we're a little bit nervy when they scored. But we held on for a famous 3-1 win. And it was nice. The Albion derby. I mean, it's not really a derby. It was a play on words. You know, Albion versus Albion, and we're the better Albion, and we're the only Albion still in the Prem. So we are the best Albion in the world. But as you said, the pre-season sort of thoughts from me. I actually thought we would stay up. I thought it'd be very difficult, and it was maybe slightly more hope than genuine like belief at the first, because obviously you don't know what to expect. You were right about Newcastle. I mean, obviously they got promoted with Rafa Benitez, so not only were they going to fix things at the club properly, but he's elite level manager. We knew Newcastle would probably do all right, and I was relatively confident. The main thing I remember that season that was key was the centre-back partnership of Duncan Duffy, which was raved about on like Match of the Day and all that. Like stats-wise and all that, they were like the best in the league for that year, which is
we were
crazy.
Really good defensively.
Yeah.
It was just offensively.
And their partnership, and not only that, they both definitely helped out with goals from that season as well. I remember. It was a very good season. I remember we got 40 points, and we sealed safety. Do you remember who we sealed safety against? In early May. It was a 1-0 win against Manchester United, where the ball had just gone over the line, and I think it was the first time goal line technology had been used for us in the Premier League, and it was absolute scenes. Pascal Gross yet again getting another important goal. To seal it, and he
loves a game against Manchester United. He still does.
That was so key as well, because our last 3 fixtures that season were Man United, Man City, and Liverpool. So to get the win against Man United to stay up with 2 games to spare was absolutely massive.
Was it Man City on the last day that season, or was that the season after?
I think it was Liverpool, because I think it would have been strange to play City first and last, but I'm pretty sure it must have been. I think it was Anfield the last game. Oh, we got battered.
So that season, we stay up. Newcastle stay up. Huddersfield managed to stay up. They have Aaron Moy at the time. They also took Pritchard, didn't they? I can remember their opening game. They beat Chelsea or something like that. But they had a really good season, Huddersfield. I think they finished like 13th or something like that. But apart from
they finished below us in 16th.
Did they?
I'm pretty sure. Yeah. But
right.
It was also the second time ever in Premier League history that all 3 promoted teams stayed up.
Yeah, so which is crazy.
It's a very rare event.
I can't think how to phrase this. Has there been a time where that's happened again since? There hasn't, has there?
I think last season became the third. I'm pretty sure with Fulham, Brentford, and
Forest.
Bournemouth, was it?
No.
Forest. Yeah, Forest.
Yeah, you're right.
Not Brentford. It wouldn't be Brentford. Yeah, sorry. It was Fulham. I think it was Fulham, Bournemouth, and Forest. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It's only happened 3 times, but yeah.
Anyway.
So very rare event to happen. Anyway, 1890, is it?
Yeah, I think we don't have to say too much about it. It was a bit of the same, wasn't it? It goes down to the second to last game of the season, was it?
Yeah. We had. So in the end, it was basically us versus Cardiff for survival, and Cardiff had managed to beat us home and away, which was not good at all. We gave them 6 points. And I remember being at work. We had Arsenal later on, I think, that weekend. I think we played them on the Sunday. I was at work on the Saturday on my break. And it was Cardiff versus Crystal Palace. And Cardiff had gone 2-0 up. And if Crystal Palace had won that game, Cardiff were relegated and Brighton survived. And that is exactly what happened. Crystal Palace came back from 2-0 down to win 3-2. And I think it's the only day where Crystal Palace thought, like, damn, we've won, and we've kept Brighton in the lead. So there must have been a little bit of pain there, knowing that if they had won, that's what was going to happen.
No, it's keep your friends close and your enemies closer, isn't it? I think they like the rivalry as well.
Yeah, and then I remember on the final day I said we were already safe, but it was glad that we were already safe because Cardiff pulled off the famous win against Man United.
Yeah,
and so we lost on the final day and we stayed up by 2 points.
It was a close game to Man City, but we weren't expecting anything. We played pretty well. But, of course, the devastating news for me, I don't know about you, but it was that Chris Hughton had been sacked after that game. And, I was gutted. Chris Hughton, at that point, my favourite manager of anyone. I thought he was superb. Taking us from Sami Hyypiä situation all the way to the Premier League and then keeping us there for 2 years. I couldn't understand the thought process behind getting rid. I didn't doubt Bloom, but I couldn't feel anything other than disappointed. I think at the time a lot of people thought we played really negative football because we were so defensive. 4-2-3-1 with two defensive midfielders. They didn't do too much other than that. And it was really disappointing. I can't say anything else.
Yeah, I think the worst thing about it was the players weren't told. And again, like, Bloom has done so much good for this club that you can't really like nitpick the bad things. But that is another one of those instances where I was a little bit angry at him for just kind of throwing it out there. Because I'm pretty sure that was Bruno's last game as well.
Yes.
And obviously they've got this tradition at the Amex where they do a clap around the pitch for the final home game of the season. And it would have. I'd kind of hoped there'd been a prior conversation with maybe Bloom and Hughton about saying, like, look, you're here to the end of the season, please keep us up, but we're thinking about moving you on next season or whatever, because we think we want to change a plan or whatever. And it would have been lovely to sort of say goodbye to both Bruno and Hughton, who are equally as big as legends in each other. Bruno from the player's perspective and Hughton for getting us up there. It would have been lovely to have given them both a send-off. And I remember it was the next morning and it was kind of just it was a bit of a sour taste knowing that Bruno got that lovely goodbye and Hughton kind of just got swept away. And it was a tough moment. But they didn't make a bad appointment, did they?
Well, that's the thing. We didn't know who they were going to appoint because at the time there was no one, right? I mean, Rafa Benitez had left Newcastle, so I was really keen on bringing Rafa in. And we kept going into pre-season. We got so close to pre-season before Graham Potter gets put in charge. And I did not want Potter. That was the one thing. I wanted someone proven with experience. I wanted Rafa, and I didn't want anyone else because I loved Hughton, and I thought he was the man to keep us in the Premier League again because that's what we were wanting, right?
Yeah.
But no, in comes Potter. Had a successful stint at Swansea before that at Malmo. Rose for university football. Got the assistant role at the Swedish side. When the manager got sacked, he stepped in and through unconventional methods of team building, he managed to put them all the way up into the top of the league system in Sweden. And
got them into Europa League as well.
And pulled off a famous game as well against Arsenal. Yeah. And then he went to Swansea, did a 6-month stint, I think. Swansea fans were gutted that he had gone because he had brought a new free-flowing style of football. And he comes into Brighton and Hove Albion at that point.
Yeah.
It didn't go well to start. That's for sure.
No, his philosophies they took a while to bed into the club, definitely. Yeah. And I'm pretty sure we finished 15th. First season.
Yeah, we did all right, but it started off poor. I remember having to. I could see straight away. I don't want to toot my own horn and go, "Oh, my footballing knowledge is better," but I could see what we were working towards after I got over sacking Hughton, and so many Brighton fans wanted him out. And that's not. It was that period, and then there was a second period in the second season of him as well that they started going, "No, this isn't for us. We want him out." But he changed the system, played a back three, which we hadn't done. Liam Balogun had to come in, I think, at that point as well, unless that was under... Or was it Uwe Hunemeyer? I don't know. It was tough times. We were really lacking in the centre-back position. Shane Duffy got injured, I think. So we brought in Webster, who we knew nothing about at that point. And to be fair, that was the start of the build towards mid-table. And rising up the Premier League, playing a new free-flowing style of football. Bloom got it right in the end. I can't remember too much about that first season, if I'm honest. I can remember getting battered by Bournemouth. Which
that was under Hewin.
No, it was under Potter. I remember defending Potter afterwards, and I was in the away end as well. I think we lost about 5-1. I can remember watching Duncan Duffy with heads in hands, looking up at the sky. By the time the fifth had gone, and all the Bournemouth fans chanting, "We want 6," which wasn't.
Yeah.
At least I was in the away end for that one. That's one of the times where you'd want to be in the away end because it's so miserable that at least you're with people who are having fun.
I remember. Yeah, I remember winning our first game under Potter, 3-0 away at Watford, where Morpay looked unbelievable. We were like, Neil Morpay, what a signing this looks like. And he scored a couple of good goals in that game. And he ended up being a little bit naff. But no, he got some vital goals for us, to be fair. I think was it Potter's second season that was COVID? I'm pretty sure, where it was a little bit disruptive.
Yeah, which means, what's that Crystal Palace game in his first, where Knockout should have got sent off in the 5th minute? And then went and curled it into the top bins of Selhurst in the last to win it.
No, again, that was Houghton. That I'm pretty sure that away win.
Was it?
I'm pretty sure, yeah. Because
that's the best. That's the best win we've had at Palace.
Yeah, definitely. That goal from Knockout. That's the thing with that period. Some wins, some highlights felt like because Houghton's last season was so like bad in a way because of like it was our worst in the Prem.
Yeah, it didn't progress.
Those good moments you think are Potter's, but I'm pretty sure that one was Houghton. But either way, there was the transitional phase between Houghton and Potter, as I said, was kind of a bit mixed results, mixed fortunes, and it just took a bit of time, as you said.
It did.
I mean, we were dominating a lot of games, and we were called like the XG club for ages.
Yeah. Putting the ball in the back of the net. What we were like at one point first on XG, which again getting ripped into on Twitter and stuff like that. But talking about the Potter era as a whole, he comes in, he doesn't do particularly well. It takes him about half a season to finally get his style flowing, but once he gets flowing, it gets flowing. Like Manchester United, all of a sudden we're looking at them games and we're thinking, come on then, we can get points here. Of course, the famous one being when Glenn Murray did that fantastic near post finish for us. But of course, Pascal Gross loves a Manchester United game as well.
Yeah.
What he did, he got us to 8th. He did irk fans a little bit when they started getting on him. I can't remember why the fans were getting on him again. Brighton fans sometimes, I just don't understand. But it was like, well, they've got to remember it's Little Brighton. Like, the club's never been in 8th. I've brought you there. Fans were like, oh, hold on. I don't like that at all. And so that caused a little bit of unrest.
Yeah, I think the one thing about Potter, and he kind of did it a little bit at Chelsea, is he's not afraid to back down.
Yeah.
And I think he has got a bit of an ego, which again every manager does, every player does, whatever. But like when he was basically saying like Brighton fans need a history lesson.
Yeah.
What I will say is I wasn't necessarily on the. I was chuffed a bit to be finished 9th.
Yeah.
So I think it was still this frustration though because I'm pretty sure it came after a game where we again had dominated, but yet we hadn't put the ball in the back of the net, or we'd drawn or whatever.
Uh-huh.
And that's when he basically said it. And look, I think his comments were maybe on the line a bit harsh, but
I agreed.
Yeah, because I don't think he should have called out the club or the fans in that way. Like, I understand he might have been angry at the time, so he might have regretted his decision. Like, I don't know, but to basically say, look how good I am, and yes, look at the history books. You've never been here before. Like, fair enough. Yeah, he'd done amazingly well. But served the players obviously, and Bloom. Bloom. Here's the thing. Bloom's the reason for success. We replace managers and all that, and I'm not saying if De Zerbi goes, who's our current manager, will continue to get better, but the systems they've got in place are the real key to success.
Yeah.
And yes, it was Potter's tactics and all that, but I think when we look back retrospectively, I kind of think this journey was going to happen, not necessarily as quickly as it did, but I think we were always going to. After we survived that Houghton period in the Prem, once we got our footing in the door of the Premier League, I think we were always going to rise up the table, but maybe not to the heights that we have.
We showed signs, serious signs that we were now an issue. I think that was the transition period when it became Little Brighton that we're going to take 6 points off to okay. These might cause us an issue, of course, XGFC, which we were. Like, the amount of chances we squandered was ridiculous. And I don't know whether our XG was overinflated when compared to XGOT and things like that, but I don't know. I don't necessarily disagree, because just some of the things Brighton fans say sometimes, they're just making no sense, and there's no context to it when you think about what Brighton is. I mean, to me and you, Brighton has been Championship, and that's been incredible and incredibly important for our upcoming. League One's still fresh in the memory of what we started as, for my journey as a Brighton fan anyway. So it felt exactly like that when Brighton fans all of a sudden were saying, well, we deserve better than what we're getting, and we're sat there in 8th and we're just not putting away the chances. I was like, no, I fully agree. And it might be because all of a sudden we had loads of new fans coming in. But I think it was it Iniesta said that it was like watching Barcelona, watching Brighton with the way we were playing football, tiki-taka stuff.
Yeah.
And people were loving the football we were playing, pundits. And it started to get a bit entitled, I think, from Brighton fans. It's tricky because, of course, when you rise up, you don't want to gatekeep your fans. But even when I see it now, like, especially with the Mason Greenwood situation, there's been things like, well, I don't want to support Manchester United anymore because I don't want it. I don't like how it's been handled. I don't agree with the club. I can't support this. I'm going to support Brighton instead. And it's like, well, why are you supporting Brighton? Like, you're in England. If you've got a local team, are you supporting Brighton because they're successful right now? I get it with attractive football if you're over in, like, America, or you're Chinese or you're Japanese and you want to support Kairi Matoma. You're South African and you loved Percy Tau. You're was it Zambia for Enoch Mwepu?
Yeah.
I get that because you're going to support the team that you find entertaining, and your local team's not playing in the best league in the world, arguably. But as soon as people started popping up with Big Six thoughts, is when I was like, okay, no, I agree with Potter. You're forgetting what Brighton are. We're still Little Brighton. But to move on from that period, of course, he got us to 9th. We're looking forward to a season now. We're expecting the signings that have been made to convert that XG now into a season where we go on and we redeem the XG and we have a fantastic season. But I think it was about 2 weeks before all of a sudden Chelsea come sniffing. Was it 2 weeks?
Well, no, it was in the season. Was it? It was in the season. Yeah, we had started really well. We played 6 games under Potter. We'd got us 13 points from that spell. We started obviously with a 2-1 win at Old Trafford, with Gross getting both again. What a man! And then we had wins. I can't remember who we beat in that. I know that his last game was the 5-2 demolishing of Leicester, where McAllister was absolutely unbelievable. He got denied that screamer, and then finished it off with, in the last minute, with an absolutely unbelievable free kick. As also that you mentioned Mwepu, that was sadly Mwepu's last game for the club, with him retiring after that through heart issues. But that was Potter's last game, and we're going into the international break, I'm pretty sure. Chelsea come knocking, and they appoint Graham Potter, and it was that. Do you know what? That's probably the most scared I've been in the Premier League, I have to say, because yes, the Houghton era, we were like, okay, we're new to this. We expected it in a way. Then the rise with Potter, I thought, okay, this is great. And, as you talked about with some of the fans being a bit greedy and not being appreciative, when Potter left, I thought, thought, because I remember saying after the 9th finish, I thought, people are going to come for our players. And I remember, because I was working the club, I said 3 things. I said, if we lose Cucurella, we lose Basuma, and we lose Potter, I reckon we go down this year. And because at this time I thought we can't keep replacing these players. We just can't keep replacing Cucurella, who was our best player that season, one player of the season or whatever. Basuma was just a ridiculously good CDM. And I thought, if we lose him, we are so bad through the middle. And then I'm like, if we lose Potter, who the hell are we going to get in? And we lost Basuma and Cucurella in the window. I thought, okay, cool. We've got Potter still. We're fine. And then Chelsea come knocking, and then I was really nervous.
The beginning of the Todd Bowley era, buying whoever he wanted to craft his image. And of course, it didn't go too well for Potter. I think it was a poison chalice, quite frankly. If you've got 36 players and you're having to run 2 training games and try and get a system across, it's just not happening. And luckily for us, he got sacked because, quite frankly, I think he would have been a fantastic manager for them. I still hold that. He did it for Brighton. He wasn't good for the first 6 months. People forget that straight away. And I think he would have been for Chelsea. But in comes Robert De Zerbi, Roberto. Was it Shakhtar Donetsk? Left when the Ukraine conflict came in. Went to Sassuolo and did quite well at Sassuolo. But to be honest, I had no idea who he was. So when I was getting asked, what do you think of the new Brighton manager? What do you think of Roberto De Zerbi? My answer was, I've got no idea, but I back Bloom because Bloom always gets it right. That's all it was. And people were saying, yeah, but have you seen what he's doing to Berardi? Like, Solly March might start banging in goals. I'd be very surprised if Solly March starts banging in goals after his injury when he was younger. But yeah, fine. We'll see what happens. I'm not going to make any thoughts until I see him play. And he managed to straight away keep the same system and just carry that momentum forwards until the end of the season in a really successful season, didn't he?
Yeah, so I was saying, highlights of this season were, I mean, he didn't win for his first 6 or 7 games, I'm pretty sure. And again, he had a horrible run, to be fair. He had the first game was away at Anfield, where he managed to get a ridiculously good 3-3 draw. Could have won that game, to be fair. Yeah. Trossard getting a hat-trick. Yeah, it was an amazing game. And when we saw that, I after that game, I thought, okay, if we've just gone to Liverpool and it's only a point, I thought, no, it's the performance we put in. I thought, wow, that was a bit like Potter's first game with I know it was only Watford, but 3-0. It was like, okay, this is new attacking football. This is amazing. We're putting our chances away. That game against Liverpool kind of felt the same. It was like, okay, this is a nice new era that we could be going into. And then we had games. I mean, we battered Forest in terms of chances, but couldn't ball the back of the net 0-0. That felt like 2 points dropped. But then Tottenham defeat, City defeat. You're like, okay, that's fine. We get that. And then it comes to the Brighton Chelsea game with Graham Potter's visit to the MX. And there was pre-game. I was there. There was a bit of a feel of, this is tasty, because obviously Cucurella is now playing for Chelsea as well. Potter's managing, and it was a tasty game from minute one. The reception that Potter Cucurella definitely got a lot more of the booing than Potter. Although Potter was I think quite harshly treated that game, but it was I joined in. It was good back. It was good back. I thought, because I personally did want Potter to do well with Chelsea, because
me too.
You've got your step up now. And we beat them 4-1, and it was an absolute mauling. Yeah. And I just remember being 3-0 up against Chelsea, thinking, oh, what has Bloom done here? I think Bloom's onto a winner. He's sussed this one out, and that was probably my favourite win of the season.
It's when Chelsea realised they got scammed.
Absolutely. And then going on through the months, I remember the back-to-back Liverpool games. We played them in the FA Cup and the league. Beat them both times. That Matoma goal where he put Joe Gomez. Sat Joe Gomez down beautifully, and it was around that time I was thinking, oh, we're on a roll here, things are clicking, and brilliant season. Got the FA Cup run. Sadly lost to United on penalties. Solly March of all people to miss was gutting. But I think we should talk about the final few games of the season. I think the moment. Do you have a moment when you knew we were going to get into Europe? Like for me, it was that McAllister penalty against Man United.
No, I kept pushing back until it was it. Even till the final day, I was still worried that Villa might. Was it Villa that were looking to take it off us?
Yeah. Villa needed a big win against us on the final day. But For me, it was the fact it was, you know, it was so bittersweet, or not bittersweet. It was so perfect, should I say, that it was a penalty against Man United, considering 3 weeks before they had beaten us at Wembley on pens.
Yeah.
And also a few seasons before under Potter, I'm pretty sure. We had that game where it was 2-2 against Man United, and the game had finished, and then Morpay had apparently in the final phase of play given a handball, so the game had to be restarted.
Yeah.
No, I know it is a definite handball, yeah. But at the time, I never knew that was a rule. When the whistle went, I thought that's it.
Yeah.
And then they checked the rule book, and they were like, no, the only way you can restart a game is if there's been a penalty offence. So yeah, the game got restarted. Fernandes took it, and that was one of the most hardest defeats I've ever taken in the Prem. So it was just beautiful in so many ways. And there was rumours that McAllister was leaving the club as well that season. That he got that moment in front of the North Stand in the 99th minute and took it away. And again, so going back to the Forest goal, I've not celebrated a goal like the Forest goal other than that one, because it was the only moment I think ever supporting Brighton where I've let everyone around me celebrate first. So I knew the goal had gone in, but I just wanted to hear it. I was like, for this moment, I thought, right, I'm not going to celebrate just straight away. I want to hear the roar and then celebrate myself. And I'm so glad I did, because the emotion that came out of me after that was just amazing. And and that was at the start of May. And then we beat Southampton, who had already been relegated. That sealed European football. And then we had City, and then we had Villa. And I just remembered the City game was actually the one that secured the Europa League, because if we had lost that game, we would have to get against them probably. Like, I think if we had lost that game, Villa could have beaten us like 6 or 7-0, and that would have dropped us into the Conference League. But it was Enciso's screamer that sealed the which one goal of the season in the Premier League. That sealed the point at home, and that was the Europa League. And I remember being at the bottom, because I've not mentioned it. I worked there as a steward. I was there at the bottom of the stand and just looking up the fans and all that, and then they just started playing the Europa League music, and that's when it hit home, and I was like, wow. So yeah, I think we probably should wrap things up with I guess tonight. How are you feeling about tonight?
Let's just keep it moving real quick. So 22-23 season we finished 6th, don't we? Guarantee Europe. 23-24 season we finished 2nd in the Premier League and win the Europa League. 24-25 we win the Premier League and the Champions League. We do pretty well. 26-27 we move to the La Liga and win the La Liga on our conquest for European football. Nah, it probably should come down to tonight. It's nice having such a passionate manager in De Zerbi now, because Potter wasn't that, and I think he got a lot of flack for that, and it's really nice to see with his comments, and it feels like we're all together. He was getting found out at the end of last season because we had to just run one tactic, but now he's had time, a pre-season, to set his own stuff up, and we're just seeing a brand new Brighton. And I want to do predictions of the season, not just tonight.
Okay.
I think Brighton have a great chance at finishing 4th. I really do. And I also think we've got a fairly decent chance at winning the Europa League based on who gets relegated from the Champions League.
Yeah, I think the Premier League is going to be tough. I think we should really be aiming for, because obviously the new format, 5th position might become a Champions League top. I think we will qualify for the Champions League next year in some way, whether it is by winning the Europa League or it's just crazy. We're talking about Brighton here in the Champions League, but
it's crazy.
It's crazy. It's crazy how we've gone from dreaming and whatever to we've both just come out and said we reckon we're actually going to make it into the Champions League next year, which is what
the pundits have been saying though. Pundits have been going, Brighton, these league contenders. We're not title contenders. Come on, until we actually contend for the title, maybe. But 4th place, I think, is well on.
What I will say about that is, on one hand, you could argue in terms of the XG and stuff that we create. We every game we've scored. Other than the defeat where to West Ham we scored 1. we've scored 3 or more goals in the other 4 games.
Yeah.
So we are putting goal, and like the last 2 results against Newcastle and Man United, both finished in the top 4 last season.
True.
And we got 3 goals against them each. But what I'm saying is, it's the consistency that you can't say we're we're not title contenders in September. We'll be title contenders in like February or March if we've somehow kept this alive.
We'll check after eating our Christmas dinner. I think is the best plan for that.
Exactly, yeah, and I don't think Leicester City fans were talking about the title that early on anyway. I think they start. I think the game, especially going back to that example, the game that I already thought Leicester were going to do it is when they beat Man City. I think like 3-0 or whatever away in February, and it was February. That was the key thing. I was like, knowing you beating City, you're now in Feb. You only got a couple of months to go. You're going to do it. So we need a result in like February, March sort of time, a clinical one. Or even one where, like, last season where we beat Bournemouth in the 88th minute, like a really like tight affair, but we managed to get the win.
Yeah.
We get like because they say champions win games that they don't necessarily don't deserve to win. Like they've been pouring, but they managed to get the result. If there's a game like that in March, then maybe. But anyway, we're jumping ahead. I personally think, it's just the Premier League title. It'd be so nice. I personally think we finish 5th this year.
Okay.
And we go deep into Europa League. I want to believe we win it, but I don't think we do. I think we finish 5th.
Really?
I reckon we get to like a semi-final stage in Europa League. Yeah, because I think at like April time, I'm not saying our performance is going to drop, but let's say we are 5th and we're in the semi-final of the Europa League. We've got 2 massive things to balance it, because if 6th or 7th are not that far behind us, there's going to be pressure on us holding on to that spot, that Champions League spot. And then also, it's our first year in Europe. There's going to be pressure to get into a semi-final stage onwards. I think it's relatively easy. Sounds really cocky. I think it's easy-ish to get to like a quarter-final semi, but then it's at that point where the more experienced teams know how to win things, and we've not done that. And I hope we're not found out, because our style of play is amazing. But we lost to Charlton last year in the League Cup. We absolutely battered them, but we didn't get over the line. And it's examples like that where I'm a little bit wary. So my prediction is 5th Europa League semi-final.
It's tough. It's Barcelona, isn't it, in the Europa League, who have just won the first La Liga title in however long. And I'm slightly concerned that if Newcastle become a fixture for us, then they'll do us over as well, because that would be so typical of Newcastle. And us.
Yeah, and United obviously lost to Bayern last night. I mean, they should still finish second, but there is a chance that they could fall into the Europa League potentially.
It's true. I think the fans would take Europa League as well at this rate. I don't think Brighton win silverware this season. Apart from that Europa League, I think that's our one punt.
Yeah, and I was about to say, I just remembered in Arsenal's group, Seville drew, and Seville are the kings of the Europa League. So if they manage to fall into it, then that's gonna be one hell of a team to beat. But
true, but
I still think
Unai Emery there. So
yeah, I think on paper though we just play such attractive football that I just hope we beat everyone we can this season.
Prediction tonight, score.
3-0.
I was going to say 3-0. I was going to say 3-0.
Yeah, I think it'll be a comfy game. I don't think the goals will come in one big cluster. I think they'll come throughout the game, and we'll have a lot of chances. And there will be moments where it's a bit nervy because it's our debut or whatever. But I think we get over the line quite comfortably. I hope.
I think we score early. I think we do exactly what I don't want us to do. I think we score a couple early and we sit off, and we just get one late as well. Evan Ferguson or something, popping it in the back of the net.
Yeah, do you know what? I was about to say, if anyone's going to score tonight, I think Ferguson gets a goal.
It'd be crazy, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Cool.
It'd be nice to. I just thought we're not even talking about Ansu Fati.
No.
But yeah, it'd be nice for him to get a goal.
No, it'd be great at some point to talk more Brighton and talk about really what's going on right now with the transfers that we've made, the development we've made in our youth academy, the players that have come through, and the story of the team right now. But because we're so far into this, we should hold that off.
Yeah, we should definitely do a second episode, and hopefully we've won a bit of silverware by then. But yeah, good chatting about the beloved Brighton.
Yeah, it was fun. It was fun. And I think this was a lot better as well than the yesterday's attempt.
Yeah, definitely.
So thank you to my computer for crashing. And also thank you if you've made it this far and you've listened to the whole thing. Please give us some feedback in the comments. We'd love to hear it. And yeah, anything to say, Jack?
Up the Albion.
Up the Albion. Right. Bye bye.
Bye bye.